This could very well be the last video I do on the Seattle Mariners this season. And the reason for that is because earlier, when they had the 10-game lead in their division, looked like they had a chance to be a real contender, even though even at that time, the offense was horrific. If you go back and find some of that earlier content, I said on a few occasions, hey, if they blow this 10-game lead and they miss the playoffs, they don't even get in, then it's full-blown time to clean house for this organization, 100%. Now, whether or not they do actually clean house, I can't say for sure, but I'm essentially here in this video going to keep that same energy because that looks like that's going to be the case. It's going to take one hell of a run for the Mariners to make the playoffs at this point, and I don't think they have it in them. I don't think there's very many fans of the Seattle Mariners right now that feel like this team does have a chance to do that. So, hey, if they go on a huge run and I look stupid for making this video, I'll eat it. I would love to see that happen. But we're going to start with the players, and then we're going to move on to Jerry Dipoto at the end of this, and we're going to talk about what I would kind of like to see happen. And let's start with the players. I know there's a lot of contracts involved in this, but I truly feel the only players that you should feel 100% safe, like, hey, they're coming back no matter what, shouldn't trade, shouldn't move on from them. I would say the majority of the starting pitching staff. However, if you are able to get really good major league hitting or really good major league bats in return for Brian Wu, Andres Munoz, or Luis Castillo, I am willing to listen to that. I really am. I am willing to listen to opportunities based around those guys. I think Logan, George Kirby, and Bryce Miller you keep no matter what, but I will be open to trades in regards to those guys. Everyone else in the bullpen, fair game. Don't care what happens to them this offseason. And if they're here or not, trade them. I don't know what the contract situations are for all of them. You know, the bullpen can use an entire revamp. And the only reason I included Andres Munoz into a possible trade that I would listen to is because I think you could get a whole hell of a lot in return for him on the offensive side of the ball, which is 100% what you need. It just is. And maybe this is a little bit selfish. A part of the reason I'm willing to give up pitching is I want this team to be fun to watch again. I hate watching just terrible offense. And I know that's selfish and that doesn't necessarily help you win baseball games, but I want to see them be a little bit more entertaining on top of just having a better offense. When we get to the position players, Cal, you got to find a way to pay them. You just have to. So important for your pitching game. Very important for the offense. You're going to get home runs out of them. You got to keep Cal. One of the best catchers in baseball. Pay him if you have to. JP Crawford, I'd love for them to trade him. He's not safe. Not safe. I actually, I think the upside for JP Crawford is maybe next year he has another bounce back year and he plays great baseball. But maybe you can also trade that and get a lot in return for it. I'm just saying. I've been so disappointed with JP's play that I am okay with him not being on this team next year as long as they get something good in return for him if that's the case. Believe it or not, I would actually really like to keep Dylan Moore. I know that his bat is wildly inconsistent, but the amount of positions he can play on defense, he's the ultimate utility guy. I would like to keep Demo. Jorge Polanco, he has played better as recently. He was arguably your worst hitter on the team for like 3 months, though. But I think you kind of have no choice, but they're probably going to have to keep him and take a chance on him and hope that he can continue this better play into the next season. But by no means do I feel like he is a must stay. I would not be hurt by any means if he's off this roster. Josh Rojas, he's terrible at the plate. I'm sorry. I know he was great in the beginning of the year. Don't care. He's been so bad for the last couple months. Do not care about his defense either. Don't care if he's on this team or not. Justin Turner, would love to keep him, actually. I don't know if it's possible, but I felt like he does bring a really good veteran leadership vibe to the team. I would like to keep him if possible, but I don't know how realistic that is. Side note on the first base situation. I mean, you're probably going to have to find a new first baseman. Maybe that's going to be Tyler Locklear. Maybe they call him up for a full year. I know nobody wants to hear somebody pat themselves on the back about something. I was Ty France's biggest defender this year. Even in his worst stretches of baseball, offensively, he was at worst the third best hitter on your team. And I wanted a guy, even though he's a slap hitter and, he's slow, doesn't have great defense. I get all of that. And when he's not hitting, he's a zero tool player. but the guy, he put the ball in play. The guy was a good contact hitter. At the end of the day, he had his slumps. And I know they wanted to just get rid of somebody because they felt like they had to make changes. And I get some of that. But Ty France has been unbelievable with the Reds since he left. And I wanted to keep him. I was like, hey, if he gets hot, he could hit 330 average for a month and put the ball in play almost every at bat. And that is something the Mariners needed desperately. So, how much do we miss Ty France right now at first base? I'm just saying that's probably going to make people upset. There's a lot of people that wanted him gone for a very long time, but I wanted to keep him, and I think he has shown he would have been very valuable if they had found a way to hold on to him. I'm just saying. Randy Arozarena, I love it. I know that he had also a pretty big slump coming over from Tampa Bay, and it sounds like he's having a little bit of some issues adjusting to just living in a new area, thousands of miles away from where his home was for such a long time. I would like to keep Randy if possible. Mitch Haniger, the amount of money that they owe him is terrible. Between Mitch, let's just talk about the Mitches together here. Mitch Haniger and Mitch Garver. And I'm going to have a whole section for Jerry Dipoto. He has to go. That's coming up. But the Mitch Haniger and Mitch Garver, owing them like $25 or $26 million together next year is one of the biggest blunders you could have possibly had as a GM. And these two guys, the amount of money that they're eating up with the lack of production that they provide. I know Mitch Haniger has had a much better season than Mitch Garver, but if he's not hitting, he's once again a zero tool player. I would love to see both Mitches gone next year, but I don't think it's realistic. They're probably going to be back because of just how much they owe him. Mitch Garver, especially, I would be willing at this point to actually give away some pretty good prospects for someone to just take Mitch Garver off our hands in his contract so we can use that money on some other players. I would love to see that happen. Don't know how realistic that is. Luke Raley and Victor Robles are safe. I feel like they should be on this roster next year. I love the way both of these guys play baseball. They're probably my two favorite guys to watch on this team right now. And then Julio Rodriguez. And this is probably a hot take. There's a lot of Julio defenders, and he deserves it because his upside is an MVP caliber player. That is 100% his upside. The flip side of that is I haven't seen much progression from Julio. I have only seen regression from Julio. I haven't seen him take any steps forward from his rookie season. I don't know. Maybe some other people want to say they have, but I've seen him only get worse every year. And that being the case, if that trend continues, he's got one more year for me before I think the Mariners have to trade him. They have to. Again, this is another, angry Mariners fan take. I understand that this sounds probably crazy, but he's got one more year for me before I personally have lost faith in Julio. If he once again has another season where he has taken steps back and has gotten worse from this year and how he has ended this year and how he plays, someone's going to give you a lot for the upside of Julio. Someone's going to, and you should really look into it if he's not an elite baseball player next year. If he is not elite, at minimum, top 10 position player in baseball next year, really consider trading this guy. I'm just telling you. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that this video makes me look terrible, and I hope I look stupid next year because Julio gets tons of MVP votes and is an unbelievable baseball player. I'm also okay with them calling guys up. If they want to call up Cole Young or some other prospect, I don't watch a whole lot of prospects. I don't watch minor league baseball, but I am open to giving some young guys a shot as well. Let's give them a shot. And now let's move on. This is going to be my biggest rant of this year and my biggest pet peeve of this season. Jerry Dipoto has done more than enough to get fired for the job he's done. And I've also noticed there's a little bit of sensitivity when it comes to people calling for someone's job or saying, hey, this guy should get fired or this person needs to not be on this team anymore. And it's really weird because people seem to be totally fine with saying that for players, But then the second they mention it for someone in a front office or a management position, for some reason, that's all of a sudden oh, that's kind of a disrespectful thing to say. But if I truly feel like Jerry Dipoto is that bad, what am I supposed to say? I think he should be fired. I don't know him personally. I bet he's an awesome guy. I really do. He's probably a great person. Nothing against him personally. I can't stand the job he does as the president of baseball operations for this team and roster building. The roster building part of his job, particularly the offense, is the worst in baseball. And that's not an exaggeration. He is at least top 3 worst. Here's the thing. Yes, he has done the best job in baseball, you could argue, with building a starting pitching rotation. Cannot take that away from him. He is the best in baseball and has shown that he is great at finding, trading, acquiring, developing starting pitching talent, or just pitching talent. If you want to give him bullpen too, sure. Even though it struggled this year, if you want to give it to him, fine. But the flip side of that, he is the worst GM in baseball at finding, developing, trading, acquiring offensive talent. He has been dead wrong way too many times in just hitters in general, in building a good, reliable offense. He's shown that he's the worst in baseball at that. And if he's not the worst, he's top 2 or 3 worst. He's in that discussion. He has to be. And I don't want to hear about the money from ownership. Yes, that's a problem. That's still problem number 1. But he still had assets to work with. He did. And I also don't want to hear about stadium and home field excuses. Yes, that's there, but not enough to go from an average to maybe slightly, like barely below average offense, go into the offseason and say, hey, we're going to focus on not striking out. We're going to focus on our offense, and we're going to build a better offensive team that doesn't strike out as much and put the ball in play. That was said. That was the plan in the offseason, to go and acquire players surrounded around that idea and then have it turn into the worst offense in Seattle Mariners history, the worst offense in baseball this year, and the team that is not only striking out more than last year, but going to strike out more than any team in the history of baseball. You have put together one of the worst offenses in the history of baseball. You can't be that wrong at your job. You can't be that bad and that worse off at your job and not get fired for it. You have to get fired for that. And I'm not saying he's going to, because I don't think ownership will. But if you were a serious organization, whoever's in charge of building a roster that performed that poorly, you got to go. You got to go. That is more than bad enough a job to get fired. And everyone cool it on defending the calling for people's job stuff, okay? If I came into work for 9 years and was god awful at 50% of my job, I wouldn't have been there for 9 years. I would have people calling for my job within a week. If you were a UPS driver and you did 50% of your job perfect and the other 50% of your job god awful, you're getting canned. And people are going to tell you should get canned. And people are going to talk about it and say, hey, that new Mitchell guy that we just hired, he's got to go. Think of it this way. And this is my last rant on the calling for people's job thing, and then I'll shut up about it, because I know that it looks like I'm just being an a-hole. I understand. Again, I'll go to the UPS analogy. If I was a UPS driver, and let's say I was perfect, I always drove and went to the right house. I might even know the city really well, and I know the fastest way to get there, the best routes to take. I never miss an address. I always go to the right house. But then I take the package when I get there and I just throw it in your driveway. Or if you got a fence in your front yard and I just punt it over the fence. Or I throw it on top of your car, or I throw it up on your roof. But hey, I always went to the right address. It was perfect every time. I get fired maybe the first day. That's what I'm trying to say. That's Jerry Dipoto. He's perfect at one aspect of his job, and the absolute worst at the other aspect. That's not good enough. I will gladly give up that other 50% that he's amazing at to get better at that other part. You just can't have that big of a disparity between the two. You can't. It's not sustainable. I don't care if the pitching gets worse in the next 5 years, if that means that the hitting goes to a top 10 offense, because that's the potential. And here's the even bigger decision that happened this year that I felt like should have got him fired. If you go back, once again, I know I'm patting myself on the back. I'm wrong a lot. I say when I'm wrong, but I'm also going to say when I'm right. If you go back and listen, when they had that 10-game lead, I came up here and did a breakdown and said, hey, this offense is still terrible. It's amazing that you have a 10-game lead, but you need to go make moves right now while you have this lead in the division to go step on their throats, put it away, put the division away, take this 10-game lead and go all in right now. Go make moves right now. Go bring in some bats. Because if you let any other teams get back into this, especially Houston, and they start making a run, and the next thing you know, it's like 7 games, 6 games, 4 games back, 3 games back, still no moves made. You get all the way to the trade deadline, and it's basically a dead even race. Okay, now we'll make moves. Okay, now we'll give away the prospects. It's too late. You let them get back into it. I genuinely believe, I wholeheartedly believe this. When they had that 10-game lead in the division, if between then and when it went to a 7-game lead in the division, if in that time frame they had given away more prospects to bring in bats sooner, which again, I understand that means they would have had to have probably grossly overpaid in prospects to make that happen, because it was before the deadline. Teams weren't 100% sure yet. You would have had to make them some crazy offers to make sure that that happened. And it would have been among your prospects that you've done a good job building. Give him credit. He's got a great roster of prospects that he has built. Should have traded him. Not sure that those guys are going to be good. Should have done more with those guys. They didn't trade any of their top 10 prospects. They held on to every single one of them. He prospect hugged. And if they had done enough before the deadline, before the division got close again with Houston, I think we're looking at a different situation with this team. I don't think we're looking at them 6 games back of the division now. I don't think we're looking at them missing the playoffs. I think we're looking at a division win. I think it would have made a difference. I really hope we don't have to deal with Jerry Dipoto anymore. And the thing is, I know that's not realistic, but I just had to get all of that off my chest because I don't want to see the Jerry Dipoto defending. You just can't defend it. And I know what's coming is going to be, who's the replacement then? Ownership's never going to do it. He does a good job of spending the least amount of money to get the most wins. Whatever. That doesn't mean me as a fan has to like that, though. I don't think there's very many fans that like that. And I'll admit, I don't know who the solution is, but I do know it is literally impossible to get worse on offense. I don't think you could get a worse offensive team than the one he put together, no matter who you are. They could bring in anybody, and I think they would do a better job than what Jerry has done with this offense. They probably won't be able to do what he did pitching, but you got your starters locked in at least for 1 more year, maybe 2. So maybe take a chance and bring some fresh eyes in and try to build this offense. And in terms of my content going forward, I will be keeping an eye on the Mariners. I'm still probably going to watch some games. If they continue to keep slipping and it's 7, 8, 9 games back of the division, I don't know how much more breakdowns people even want to see. And let me know if you guys want me to keep doing baseball breakdowns of this team, and you guys flood my comments. You're like, hey, I want to see more Mariners breakdowns. And I do love breaking down baseball games. I do enjoy that. I love breaking down the nitty gritty, like X's and O's of baseball. I love it. It's my favorite sport. It's what I played until I was 21 years old. It was a big part of my life. I love baseball, and I will break down more games, but I'm such a fan of the Mariners. It's just hard to get myself to just break down really crappy baseball every day. But we do have the NFL season coming up. And if you're interested in more Seattle sports breakdowns, or NFL or baseball content in general, please consider subscribing. We hit 2,100. I cannot thank every single person enough. All 2,100 of you. You guys are the best. I'm having a ton of fun, and I cannot wait to see how much this page grows along with you guys. Thank you, and I will see you guys in my next video. Hopefully better news next time.